everybody. It's Tuesday and you're watching The Hash. I'm Jen Sanasti and I'm joined by all of my favorite people. Zach Seward dancing up there in the corner, Will Foxley and George Kaludis. We are going to tell you about the latest and greatest in crypto this morning. Zach, I think you have the first story, so take it away.
And confirm, I do have the first story that is correct. It is about everyone's favorite Ethereum venture studio, Consensys, big old whopping raise out of Joe Lubin's Brooklyn-based firm. They raised $450 million. They got a valuation of $7 billion. They had some investors in here, big name investors, including 21 Savage and Young Thug, noted rappers. So I'm just going to put that out there on the table as well. That happened. This is a pretty big round, kind of doubles their valuation from their raise late last year, and is interesting in the world of valuations. You look at like Alchemy, which is similarly in the business of providing infrastructure for some of these smart contract blockchains, specifically Ethereum, and Alchemy is valued at like 10 billion. So I think 7 billion for Consensys, which has been sort of a bedrock of the Ethereum developer scene for a long time, might be a bit of a steal. But there comes with drama, with controversy, with some people who kind of feel like they got the short end of the stick when it came to valuing key assets such as MetaMask and Infura, which are a big part of this story. And there's a lot to unpack here. Consensys is just the firm that keeps on going, keeps on building, and they're always interesting to discuss, especially on a day like this. So I'm going to toss this straight to Will for his initial thoughts on Consensys raising a boatload.
Yeah, two things really interesting about this headline. One, actually, I guess, was deeper into the article itself, is that Alchemy has raised a $10 billion valuation, which Alchemy is definitely more of the new kid on the block in terms of Ethereum infrastructure providers. Most people know about MetaMask, and therefore most people know about Consensys. Consensys and Ethereum, those are the two names that are like big in the smart contract platform space, and you always see them together. So it was interesting to see the new player have a slightly higher valuation. Of course, a lot of these things are subjective, depends on like what investment bank you're using. So I don't know. Could be a good valuation, could be just a difference depending on who you're using for your raise. The second thing that's interesting here, of course, is the lawsuits that we've seen come out over the last few months. There's been two of note, one with a formal general counsel who has been taking issue with the carry that she was supposed to get from Consensys, and then a second one more recently issued in Switzerland with a lot of different investors or a lot of different people who had vesting in equity in Consensys who are claiming that they were not consulted and they did not agree to a valuation given for a certain product back in 2020. How these things play out is going to matter a lot for the space because of the projects that Consensys currently owns. MetaMask is still a Consensys project. People are still wondering if there's going to be a token drop. That project generates a ton of revenue. Every time you swap on MetaMask, a little bit of money goes in Joe Lubin's pocket and the rest of the people at Consensys. And the people who used to be at Consensys, they want that money, and they probably have a right to it at some level. So we'll see what ends up happening with the court order here. Jen, I want to throw this story over to you and get your take on it, though.
Yeah, I didn't look too much into the lawsuits this morning, but I was kind of flabbergasted by this number. Like, we keep seeing these massive raises and these companies valued at billions of dollars. And I think that the way they're going to spend the money is clever. So the MetaMask now has over 30 million monthly active users. Consensys plans to increase their headcount to over 1,000 employees, and they're going to work on a major redesign for MetaMask. And we talk so much about user experience and mainstream adoption, and I think that's exactly it. And that's why they were able to raise this amount of money, especially with mainstream players like 21 Savage and Young Thug. I just think they're going to kind of ride that first mover wave and continue to be ahead until there is a real disruptor who can challenge their offering. And I don't think we've really seen that yet. Zach?
Yeah, I mean, I think the 30 million number, like, it's in the headline for a reason, right? Like, MetaMask is how most people interact with these networks, right? You can do stuff on chain, you can buy NFTs, you can participate in DeFi, and probably most people who are doing that on the Ethereum blockchain specifically, and also on EVM compatible chains, most people are probably doing that through MetaMask. So, I think that is somehow an undertold aspect of the Consensys story, that MetaMask is a Consensys product, and as Will alluded to, in Infura, which runs a lot of the nodes that keep these services up and running. That's also a huge part of the Consensys portfolio. So, the Ethereum blockchain, right? It's a market cap of like $310 billion just for Ether itself, not to mention all the subsequent other tokens and all the subsequent other value that's locked on that chain. So for a company as foundational to the success and the growth over the years of the Ethereum network, a $7 billion valuation, I mean, makes sense in those terms, right? There's a ton of value that is going into this network that this company is supporting pretty actively. So makes sense that the big number would be here. And I think it makes sense that, infrastructure firms, as sort of boring and complicated as they can be to understand, are really where investors see value accruing at the equity level with these companies. I'm going to toss it to George, though. We got to get George in on this. George, what's up?
Yeah. I read 21 Savage's name. I just want to say I was proud of him on his last feature on J. Cole's album. He actually did a really good job. And look at him now. He's doing good investments as well.
Look at him now.
Look at him now. With all my criticisms of altcoins, MetaMask is actually a pretty good product. And having an in-browser wallet is actually super important. And the fact that there's 30 million people using MetaMask is huge. It's a huge thing. And it's actually something that has slowed down Bitcoin adoption, the fact that there isn't a MetaMask equivalent. So I agree with all y'all. It's really shocking that the valuation, although it is high, it's billions of dollars, it feels like it's low. I mean, again, I don't use MetaMask every day, but the times I have tested it out to use it, it's actually pretty seamless. I don't know actually how to use it with a hardware wallet. I think that's sort of where the difficulties come in, but it's a pretty good product. And Infura is obviously the backbone of, the Ethereum network. It's actually what the big criticism, like the hardcore maxis say, like, oh, when Infura goes down, what are you going to do? And it's like, well, I'm not quite sure. So I have nothing more to say there other than this valuation feels light. I agree with all that.
I'll take it for one more bit of info I thought was really interesting in this piece. So a lot of projects have come out of Consensys in the past. You can think of Gitcoin, Truffle, Brownie, MetaMask. There's a lot of different projects within it. And often there's been rumors that the only way you can graduate out of Consensys, which is more so than not an incubator for projects, is by launching a token. And you get a little info in here about that in the article itself. They have a chief strategy officer, Simon Morris, saying, we're really pursuing an agenda around decentralization. And how we do that is take a core piece of the project. We put it not just in our hands, but a combination of hands and our partners and our end users. So interesting to see that they're basically saying, yes, we want everything to have a token on some level, more so than likely. Give it to you, Zach.
Last quick shout out of them putting their money where their mouth is. They turned a lot of this dirty fiat into Ether, into ETH itself. So part of the 450 million from various venture capitalists, wrappers, and other noted investors is going back in to the coin itself. Anyway, we'll wrap it there. George, take it away.
Yeah, and win token. Anyway, next story is my story, which is about Kazakhstan. I'm sorry for mispronouncing it. I think it's Kazakhstan, right? A Kazakhstan crackdown has forced over 100 crypto miners to close. Reminder that Kazakhstan represents something like 20% of total Bitcoin mining capacity. We've seen some issues in Kazakhstan with their electrical grid stability, some political instability where the internet was shut down for a period of time, and now apparently a bit more financial corruption to go alongside that corruption. Half the sites that were closed, so about 50 of them, were closed due to suspected tax evasion and taking advantage of these special economic zones without permission. This has been an ongoing thing in Kazakhstan as criminal cases open up. The Kazakh government took down 200 megawatts of illegal crypto mines in February. And this is all happening in a country that is highly coal dependent for its energy production. To me, this feels like it may spook some of the Kazakh domiciled miners that moved from China after the ban in China. And maybe, they'll start airlifting their operations to Maryland like we saw last year with some Chinese miners. I won't speculate wildly, but I want Will, the mining man, to do that for me.
The mining man is a new one. Yeah, disclosure, I do work for a mining company, so we'll just throw that out there. I think a lot of these headlines, they pop up like once a month now, but for the most part, anyone who's been mining in that region is sticking it out, and anyone who wanted to leave had ample time. Like months ago, we saw back in August is when the first headlines about Kazakhstan came out about them limiting mining in some ways here and there. And for the most part, people who didn't want to be mining there anymore have left and have actually mostly moved to the United States, whether it be Texas, Wyoming, or other states that are highly energy intensive. So I don't see a lot of these headlines as being like too important at this stage. Like, it's important to keep tracking developments in that region, but for the most part, like, they've left if they want to leave. These headlines mostly correlate to mines that are illegal, mostly meaning like they were on the grid somewhere where they weren't supposed to be. A lot of the miners who are in that region are off grid. They're using energy sources that are stranded. They're not being used for cities, and they're trying to make this a more regulated practice in the region than it has been in the past. So I think this is just like another case of, hey, there's some people who were on the grid pulling energy they weren't supposed to. I saw two hands go up. I'm going to throw it to Jen first, but Zach also had a take. So we'll see who gets in the next.
I'll go super, super quick. I was going to ask about those illegal mines. So thank you for clearing that up, Will. It was interesting for me while I was reading this article that several prominent political and financial figures were involved in the operations of these illegal mines. And it's just interesting for me to think about the strain on the power grid. And so that being the reason why the country is cracking down on these illegal mines. And I just wonder why they wouldn't incentivize miners. I think Kazakhstan is still the second largest country when it comes to Bitcoin mining. Why they wouldn't incentivize them to invest in sustainable sources to maintain these mines, and why they would instead push them out, given the fact that there are these large figureheads who are operating mines kind of in the shadows. And those are just my ramblings and my thoughts after reading this article. I don't think we're going to get to any answers on this show, but I wonder. Zach?
Great minds think alike, Jen. I was definitely feeling the power broker section of this article. I mean, how could you not be bullish on the Kazakh mining sector with such luminaries as the 17th richest man in Kazakhstan operating a Bitcoin mine? That is tight. Also, brothers of key politicians, all sorts of stuff in here. Really an interesting little snapshot of who is powering the mining sector in Kazakhstan, and some pretty big names with, again, power brokers of the local scene. So I thought that was like super duper interesting. That detail was included in there, and I thought that made for a satisfying read. But yeah, Kazakhstan, we should go. Any crypto conferences in Kazakhstan? Will, George,
we should go.
Jen,
the hash. We should do the hash.
I mean, we should all just get down there. Yeah.
I'm into it. We should check that out sometime. All right, cool. We're gonna wrap it there. We're gonna go plan our travels around the world. Hash hits the road. It's gonna be great. Kazakhstan, here we come. After that, we're gonna keep going east to China. We're gonna talk about China. Some interesting developments beginning out of China and the Saudi oil trade involving the Yuan. We'll stick with that after the break. It's the Hash. Let's talk geopolitics. See you soon.
And welcome back to the Hash. So we got more geopolitical talk for you guys this morning. Less crypto talk, more geopolitical. And that's Saudi Arabia, which is thinking about brokering some of its oil sales in Yuan. Why would this matter? Well, basically, the way that the oil system has been created since the 1970s is that oil is purchased from Saudi Arabia in dollars. This has helped keep the United States dollar as a dominant reserve currency in the world. But we're starting to see some cracks in that, especially after the recent actions around sanctions in Iran, sanctions against Russia. And now we're seeing like China's looking at that and saying, hey, maybe we don't want to be completely dollarized. And Saudi Arabia is also saying, oh, we can cater to you guys possibly here. So they're saying about 20% right now of total oil sales are actually done in yuan or other currencies. 80% are done in dollars, and that number could drop significantly if we see this deal go through with Saudi Arabia. Looking at the report more in depth, it's a pretty long read, but it is a good read. It seems that this headline might be a little too, reactionary is probably not the right word, but like a little too hasty, perhaps. Seems like this would take years to develop. It just is an interest between Saudi Arabia and China right now. Zach, I do want to throw this one up to you, though. Of course, we see an intersection with Bitcoin and crypto because of the reserve asset situation. We've also seen with the Ukraine and Russia conflict that Bitcoin and other cryptos are uncensorable money. It really ties nicely into this story. Maybe you could walk it out for our audience a little bit more.
I'm really not the one to walk it out, but I think, any sign of a post-dollar world is something that people within the crypto community are right to be thinking about. This is an interesting sort of indicator, and I think Will, you're right. It may not be a slam dunk in terms of the end of the dollar, but it's certainly an interesting sign, right? This has been tried previously, I think in 2018, according to the reporting. So this isn't exactly new, but the idea that this is emerging at this point in time when the weaponization of the financial system is sort of playing out in real time is certainly interesting for what a post-dollar future could look like, right? If these oil contracts are settled in yuan instead of in dollar, that's a notable development as it relates to America's standing as the preeminent financial power in the world. Is this going to be the one that breaks the camel's back? Probably not, but it's an interesting sign, a little bit of interesting tea leaves to read in terms of how sort of these alliances of countries can escape the dollar's reign. Again, early days of this one, but certainly interesting to think about. Jen, saw your hand up. I'm going to toss it your way.
Yeah, it was interesting for me to read a little bit about the history as to how we got here and China's wooing of Saudi Arabia. So China's been helping Saudi Arabia build ballistic missiles. They consulted on the nuclear program and even invested in Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salam's pet projects, which was interesting to read, how invested they are in Saudi Arabia, selling oil in the yuan. I just wonder, and maybe George, you can explain for us. I think you're probably maybe not. I don't know. What this would mean for Saudi's economy and the US's if this were to go through.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure the Saudis necessarily care who exactly is buying their oil as long as they're getting their OPEC cartel premium, if you will. Saudi is very rich in oil. I don't think they quite frankly care who's buying it. If China's going to buy it for more than the US is going to buy it for, or vice versa, I'm sure they'll sell to the highest bidder. When it comes to US, dominance in our economy, there are many, many reasons why the USD dominates. One of those things is the fact that oil trades are settled in US dollars. And I'm not going to pretend I know the exact history of why that happened. But for my entire life, the US has been the dominant economic force, with China sort of this, quote unquote, developing economy right on the heels of the United States. And really in the past couple of years, it's been sort of a reckoning of, is the biggest economy in the world really the United States, or is it China? And it probably is China. And for a while, we're probably going to see this sort of two-headed monster of these big economies vying for economic dominance, because there is value in being the dominant economy in the world. You get to kind of do whatever you want. You kind of play the big bad, dictator, for lack of a better term. The U.S. has had that for a long time. If we lose a petrodollar, which to Will's point is probably not going to happen overnight, it's probably a bit hasty to call the end of that. It would be painful for the United States. We've been in a position of, economic dominance, and losing that is not a good thing. What the world looks like at the end of the day, I'm not really sure. It's not like the U.S. is going to cease to exist, but it will look different.
George, I want to get your take on this.
Stats. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to get your take on this with the article that you wrote last week. I forget what the newsletter is called, but going through
Sure.
Zoltan's new piece about the dollar reserve currency, maybe breaking Bretton Woods 3, that sort of action. What was your take on this story in context of that?
Yeah, there was another story that kind of broke last night where something along the lines of Russia was considering or asked India to buy their commodities at a discount, which aligns exactly with that story we talked about yesterday, where we might move towards a more commodity-based money system because these Russian commodities, which is like a lot of them, are looked at as subprime. And they want Russia, they want to sell their commodities. No one's buying them, even though the price of, oil and everything is going up, or I guess it's going down now, but it was going up. Selling at a discount to India kind of puts everyone at a disadvantage when it comes to, this inside money, debt-denominated system. This Saudi Arabia accepting Chinese currency for oil in lieu of US dollar, while it doesn't necessarily say that or show that they're not going to use this inside money, this other countries' money, it is a deviation from the norm right now. So while not exactly the same thing, it is definitely like showing the cracks. And it's so wild to me that we're living in a time that feels like our economic fabric is kind of being, torn apart. Maybe every generation feels this, but it's kind of interesting to see some of these things play out. So while not exactly the same thing as the, this commodity-based outside money, it is similar. And, anything that hurts the dominance of the US dollar opens the door for Bitcoin. So maybe Bitcoin does, slide in there. Perhaps instead of having a USD denominated oil market, maybe we have a Bitcoin denominated oil market. A little bit of hopium for you guys. Anyway, I think
Inhale
we have our next
hopium.
story.
Get out the hopium memes. Thank you, George. We love the hopium
Absolutely.
memes. I appreciate you.
Hopefully I made sense, guys.
Oil barrel says hopium with a little mask and just very happy.
It's like a 19th century political cartoon of George.
Good times. Sticking with the China theme, let's kick it over to Jen for the last story of the day.
Yeah, all right. So we're staying in China, and in a first for Shanghai, the police busted a $16 million crypto pyramid scheme. So more than 10 people were arrested after a 6-month-long investigation. The suspected criminals set up an online platform that attracted users through membership rewards and the promise of a static income. Users would change fiat for platform tokens, but the tokens had no market value and the price was controlled by the platform itself. And so I love to talk about a good scam on this show. Even though I think oftentimes a lot of our takes are very similar, because it's important for newcomers to the space to understand that scams are getting more and more sophisticated, and for us to help people understand what to look out for. So, George, I'm going to pass this one down to you. This is a really sophisticated, large-scale scam. What did you take away from reading the article?
My takeaway was, and this is very brief, how is this the first crypto scam in Shanghai? That feels like impossible, right?
It does feel impossible. I think, and Zach, correct me if I'm wrong, it was the first time the police have busted a crypto scam to this magnitude in Shanghai.
I don't know. Book them, Dano. I don't know. I just know that it is pretty sweet to see these guys get busted. But yeah, I really don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if there were previous actions here, right? There's been scamming around for a long time, especially in the crypto space. So whatever that first is, we'd have to do some additional reporting to nail that one down. But yeah, man, I mean, hey, at least it wasn't Satoshi Nakamoto that they got. Am I right? Am I right? Biggest pyramid scheme of them all. Huh, George?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh my God.
He's waiting to cash out.
Yeah. Got him. Zing.
I have a general comment about scams, and I think it lends itself to just crypto in general. We've heard stories about people 10xing and 100xing in like legitimate ways, right? SBF is one of the richest people in crypto, legitimately so. And one of his most famous tweets from last year was, "Sell me all the Solana you have at $3." And he added some colorful language in there, and then more colorful language saying, "Go away." And then he, from there, 60 or 70x'd his money. And that's some rich guy who's getting even richer. I think crypto lends itself to like, oh, you have the way to make the money here because people have 10x to 100x. And it's like, okay, guaranteeing that I'm going to make money is not like that absurd for someone to say who's starting a crypto project, because people made money off Shiba. I know people personally who retired because they bought Shiba Inu as a joke, and it went up.
Wait, you do? You know people who personally retired because of Shiba? It's real?
Yeah, I do, actually.
Get them on the show, George.
He's a legend.
Need to interview this person. Wow.
Although he probably sold a little too early, but that's okay. But the point is, like, crypto lends itself to these kinds of scams. If someone told you, oh, buy this, you know, we're thinking about Wolf of Wall Street era, and it's like, oh, buy this penny stock and it's going to go up. That's been done before, you know. We know that's a scam, but we've seen Solana go from $2 to $200. And Solana is one of those respected projects. So crypto scams kind of just lend itself to what crypto is. Even Bitcoin, which is, you know, the blue chip, has 10x, like, since I've paid attention to, well, more than that since I've paid attention to it. Anyway, Will, what you got for me? Or for us?
Yeah,
Sorry.
The one thing that was interesting to me was the amount of people involved. 60,000 member accounts with 72 levels. So some sort of hierarchy here I'm reading, with 100 million renminbi using this. So a lot of money, a lot of people, and a lot of structure to this. Obviously, pyramid schemes have some sort of structure, but keeping this alive is pretty impressive given how many people were involved with it. And I mean, they always come apart. They always do. That's what happens with pyramid schemes. So not surprising to see that. I think the other thing that's interesting out of this is that the Chinese government has been going after these things. You know, recently they outlawed donations in crypto, or like peer-to-peer transactions in crypto last September, and then also fundraising in digital assets rather pretty recently. They're just trying to go after every single way that there's going to be some sort of way of like sucking money out of innocent people's hands, so to speak. I think you're going to keep seeing this happen, though, just because it's so easy to spin these things up. Like, I don't know if you guys are on Telegram, but like every day I get put in a new pump Telegram channel. It just, someone throws it together, some people buy into it, and they lose money. And that's just what happens. Seems that the story is happening in China just as well here in the United States. That's my 2 cents on the topic, though. I'll leave it there. Jen, throw it back to you.
I think that was a great 2 cents. I think it is really sad to continuously hear these stories. You're welcome. I mean, there's been a bunch of stories in the Canadian news and on social media about people who have been taken advantage of on dating apps where people are saying like, I can help you with your investments. And I think that it's just important that if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, and always do your own research. I mean, this scam was a little bit more sophisticated. They were organizing lectures to teach people about the underlying technology that their token was built on. And so it was a little bit more sophisticated, but always do your own research. And if something is not making sense to you, just, you know, maybe don't put all of your money into it. But that's where I'll leave it.
Well, Will, I think we can take your 2 cents. And if you join George's trading group, we can 10x that 2 cents into 20 cents. Two shiny dimes of beautiful insight.
One step closer to retirement.
Stick with us for that. All right, that's it for the show. That's it for the show today. We're going to shut it down. We'll be back tomorrow. Hope you're enjoying the hash. Hope you're enjoying CoinDesk TV. Hope you're enjoying CoinDesk.com as well. We're enjoying you. I know that much. I'm enjoying my lovely co-hosts, Will, George, Jen, and shout out to Control. Everybody making this show work. We appreciate you. Hey, there it is.
I heard that.
All right, that's it for today. Hope you're having a good one, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.